Gunnar's Daughter, Chapter 25. Vigdis and Eluge came to the king's house on the day King Olaf and his bodyguard were keeping Palm Sunday. They were given shelter in a house nearby. After nones, they went to the king's lodging, and Vigdis asked to be brought before King Olaf. She had made herself as tidy as she could, and she came forward with a courtly and handsome demeanor and stated her case well. The king kept his eyes on her while she was speaking, and when she had finished, he said, "You have suffered a great wrong, Vigdis, if these things are as you say, and I have heard of these sons of Arn before, that they were evildoers. But who is your companion?" Eluge then stepped forward and said, "They call me Eluge the Fair, Lord, and these last years I have been living in the forest south of here." At this the king frowned and answered, "I have heard your name before. Perhaps it had been better if it were not so, and better for your case, Vigdis, if you had had other spokesmen than outlawed robbers and bandits." "The master is thus, my lord king," said Vigdis. "These men helped me and saved the lives of me and my son when I was driven from my home like a bitch. And Eluge showed me the way hither when I asked him, although he is an outlaw and risked his life in doing it. Therefore, my lord, it is not fitting that I accept any help of you until you give me a promise that he shall have protection and safe conduct home to his forest, if you will not grant that he make his peace with you." The king then said that Eluge should have immunity while the Easter festival lasted, and that they would discuss these affairs later. He bade them be his guests till all things were settled, and in the days which followed he had much talk with Vigdis, and she had to tell him the whole story of the slaying of Eolf Arnson and of her doings since. On Easter Eve he sent for her. He was alone in the hall, and he bade her sit on the bench beside him. It was late in the evening. He now asked her about Eluge and whether he was the father of her child. Vigdis answered no, and said there was nothing between her and Eluge in that way. King Olaf then asked whose was the boy, and where was he, and why was she not married? "I know little about him, my lord," said Vigdis. "He was not of this country. I was young and foolish, and so I let him seduce me. But I do not like to speak of him, and I beg you, ask me no more of this." The king put his arm around her and said, "You are not likely to stay long a widow, Vigdis, seeing you are so fair and wise." Vigdis tried to rise, but King Olaf held her and set her on his knees. Then she said, "My life has not been such that I wish to love again. But now I beg you, my lord, to let me go, for the hour is late." King Olaf laughed and kissed her, saying, "Rather will I have you stay with me. Do you not think, Vigdis, we are well suited, you and I? And it were no shame for you to be my leman. I would reward you well for your love." "This does not become you, my lord king," replied Vigdis. "You can have any maid you will, and need not drink of the cup another has tasted before." The king laughed yet more and kissed her again, saying, "Your lips taste just as sweet for that, Vigdis." And now he picked her up, laid her on the bench, and would sport with her. Then Vigdis pressed her hand against her breast and said, "Greater sorrows did he bear for you, that God in whom you believe, than will be yours if you let me go my way." King Olaf released her. After a moment he rose and said she might go if she wished. Vigdis put her feet to the floor. She now felt less unwilling to stay with Olaf than before, but the king remained seated on the bench and did not speak to her. So after a while she rose and went out of the hall over to the women's house. Now came the 2 great holy days, and while they lasted the king did not speak to Vigdis, but on the 3rd day he sent for her again. There were then many of his men with him. He now said he would send men with her to Grefsen and would help her cause, so that she might be righted in every way. He also promised to help Eluge and his fellows to make their peace. But after saying this, he went aside with Vigdis, and now he fixed his eyes on her, and he said, "Tell me truly, Vigdis, will you be married to Eluge the Fair when you get back to your manor?" Vigdis looked up and answered him, "You think far too meanly of me, my lord, if you believe I would rather play with the wolf than with the lion. But now, since I see you have shown me such great kindness, that I am well assured there is none like you among chieftains, I have another boon to ask. Let a priest go with me to Vaden, and grant that I may be taught and baptized in your faith. For this I see. My father put all his trust in his own strength, and I too once held the same belief. But now I understand that your faith is the best. King Olaf then softened and was pleased with this. Eluge was also baptized, and he stayed with the king, as did Einar Hendelding, when their causes had been settled. But Hermod bought himself a ship and left the country. The king sent some of his men south with Vigdis, a priest among them. They went to Grefsen, and Care received her well. She now heard that on the night Vaden was burnt, they had been at a banquet, all those from Grefsen. When Care saw the fire, he collected men and set out after Cole Arnson. When they met, Care killed Cole. After they had made a long search for Vigdis but found no trace, they then thought she had perished. The matter was then brought to judgment at the Thing, and no compensation was awarded for the sons of Arn, but those who represented them had to make reparation for the killing of Asha and for the damage done to houses and cattle at Vaden, and the fine was a great one. Vigdis had the houses rebuilt in the summer. She throve greatly and was soon held in much repute for her courage and husbandry. She had her son baptized and called him Olvar, because she had carried him that night through the wolves' forest. Afterwards, she caused a church to be built of good timber on the hill to the southward by the river Frisia. Folk in the Oslo country accepted the new faith, and Vigdis was steadfast in her baptism, though she was not very zealous in her faith, for she had much to see to on her estate. And now many years passed, and all was quiet at Vaden. But now the tale must return to Yacht.